And warmer from below, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Justin Perri, who does tremendous work over at Shot Hawaii Bets. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's all seen in terms of college basketball the last few weeks, recap a little bit of what we saw on Saturday, and then turn it forward, take a look at Sunday and beyond. Justin does such a good job taking a look at this great sport of college basketball, and it's always great to be able to get him aboard. So he's going to be joining me in segment number 2. We're also going to be just discussing a little bit about some of the things that he's been taking a look at in terms of the SEC and the way that they have been playing as well. So that's been one of the most interesting conferences in all of college basketball, and also some of the top teams that he's identifying as well. We're going to talk a little bit about Purdue. We're going to talk a little bit about Houston as well. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review. Really did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but boy, oh boy, did we have an interesting day of college basketball on Saturday. It would be hard to recap north of 150 total results, as that was very harebrained. That was just absolutely insane and crazy. But that said, we're going to take a look at some of the highlights and try to get you guys best caught up on everything that we saw in college basketball as humanly possible. Try to find some trends and also try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Well, your top cover team in all of college basketball is going to be hitting the floor on Sunday. That would actually be the Minnesota Golden Gophers. This team has also been a moneymaker for you as well, and they just continue to find a way to cover. Texas A&M Corpus Christi was unable to get an outright win against McNeese State, but a lot of places you will find them in that neighborhood about a 10 to a 10.5 point underdog, and they were able to hold in there. They now go to 15-4 against the spread. For comparison, Minnesota is right now 19-3 against the spread as your top cover team in all of college basketball. But that said, they were able to do a nice job holding in there as Texas A&M Corpus Christi loses in this one by a count of 74-67, and this was a game where it looked like it might get away from them. McNeese was up by double figures throughout much of it, but they were able to do just enough to claw their way back as these two teams won a combined 6 of 31 from three-point range, so that was relatively brutal. And for Texas A&M Corpus Christi, they were able to win the turnover battle 19-17, so they were able to cash you a ticket there. Another team has been a really good cover team throughout the season has been the Richmond Itsy Bitsy Spiders. They are now 17-5-1 against the spread. They were able to get it done against LaSalle. This by a count of 82-65. They were laying about 9.5 in this one. It was Najee Bailey who was your main guy in this one. As for Mr. Bailey, he was able to go out there, gave you 22 points, 7 boards. Very, very good performance out of him. So those were your top 2 cover teams out there. And then how about UW Green Bay? We've got to give them a little bit of love. I know that we're going to hit on the top 25 teams here in a second, but I always love giving some love to the little guys as UW Green Bay now 18-6 against the spread as about 10.5 or so point underdogs against Youngstown State. Foster Wonders with a 3 with about a second remaining gets them the win 84-83. Green Bay went 14 of 29 from three-point range, and Sundance Wicks all of a sudden as UW Green Bay are cooking as they're atop the Horizon League right now at 12-3. Not something we thought we were going to be seeing, so that has been an absolutely tremendous story out there in my home state of Wisconsin. Got to give them a little bit of love. That said, if you're looking at the top 25 teams that were in action, many people thought that this was going to be a rough spot for Arizona. I did not, and Arizona got the job done 99-79. They completely lambasted Colorado, and this Arizona team was caliente as they went 10 of 22 from three-point range. Colorado goes just 5 of 17 from distance. Meanwhile, for Arizona, they're able to win the turnover battle by a count of 16-9 as well. You had Tristan De Silva chip in there 20 points for Colorado, but for Arizona, Umar Paulo 16 points, 13 rebounds. Caleb Love was able to throw in there 19 points. Bell Larson was able to give you 18. Just a really good collective effort for Arizona to be able to get that one to the window. you saw this team be able to get the win but no cover. BYU has been one of your better cover teams in college basketball. They are able to win against Kansas State at home by a count of 72-66. BYU now 14-9 against the spread, but for BYU, a little bit colder from three-point range in this one, and they also went 10 of 21 at the free throw line. If you're wondering why Kansas State was able to cover, they went 10 of 12 at the free throw line. BYU 10 of 21 at the free throw line, and they went 8 of 25 from three-point range. So a little bit of an off-shooting night for BYU, despite the fact that they were able to dominate the turnover battle 16-7. They did, although, lose the rebound battle by a count of 42-34 in this affair as well. You did see a stunning sweep as UNLV. They had knocked off New Mexico a few weeks ago. They get them once again, 80-77, the second loss at the pit for New Mexico in less than 14 days. New Mexico still is 16-17 against the spread, but man, for UNLV, they just went inside. They went just 2 of 8 from 3, while New Mexico was able to go 8 of 20 from distance, but for UNLV, they lose a rebound battle 41-39 as JT Toppin had 12 boards, but the guy that was able to step up, Dedan Thomas, the freshman for UNLV, chips in their 25 points, 4 assists, really good performance out of him. This was also a really nice performance as Purdue, they get the win, they get the cover. They were laying double figures in this one against Indiana, and they just completely blew past them, 79-59. Indiana could not muster up, well, much of anything in this one as Zach Edey, giant of the earth, he goes out there for 26 points, 13 rebounds. Purdue goes 8 of 21 from 3, and they hold Indiana to going 4 of 16 from distance. Indiana loses a rebound battle, 46-31, just thorough domination in that rivalry this season as Purdue, they're able to really make a statement in terms of being the best team in the Big Ten, especially when Wisconsin goes down in a fiery heap against Rutgers, 78-56 final in this one, and Rutgers has been one of the best under teams in college basketball this year. This one goes over just because they were able to land base Wisconsin. Rutgers now 16 unders to 7 overs thus far this season, and for Wisconsin, they go 5-21 from 3, but Rutgers 10 of 17 from distance, including Noah Fernandez, a perfect 5 of 5 from three-point range off the bench. Wisconsin, at one point, it was looking very, very good for the team, and ever since the calendar has turned to February, they went 0-4 straight up. So that's been something very noteworthy. This has been a team that has not been slowing down one bit, though, and that would be Alabama. They now have 17 overs to 7 unders thus far this season. They take down LSU by a count of 109-92. As for Alabama, they go 18 of 44 from three-point range. LSU went a mere 7 of 19 from three-point range, although he did have Jalen Cook come off the bench for 20 points, but Mark Sears throws in there 23 points, Latrell Wrightsell 21 points, 10 boards, just thorough domination by this Alabama team. They were able to get a very convincing win, and this has been a team that has been really good at covering as well. How about South Carolina and the fact that they go to 21-3 straight up and 18-6 against the spread? They take it to Vanderbilt by a count of 75-60. They were laying about 11.5 in this one as the guy that has really emerged for the team recently, Colin Murray Boyles, a top 100 freshman that wasn't doing a lot towards the beginning of the year. I think that he was a little bit banged up. 31 points, 7 rebounds. Vanderbilt loses the turnover battle 31-26. They actually win the turnover battle 7-6, but for Vanderbilt, they go just 5 of 15 from three-point range, just not enough for them to be able to cover against South Carolina. This was a very quality win for Michigan State. They take down Illinois by a count of 88-80, and ever since Terrence Shannon has come back in the fold, this Illinois team has been playing a whole bunch of overs. As for Illinois, I believe that they have now played out of their last 7 games, 6 of them to the over. As for Illinois, 11 of 30 from three-point range. They do go 17 of 20 at the charity stripe, but A.J. Hoggard supplies 23 points. Malik Hall is able to chip in there 22 as well, so a nice thorough win there from Michigan State. You saw Duke in a little bit of a nip-and-tuck game against Boston College, not in terms of straight up, but in terms of against the spread. This was a spread that I was seeing in a lot of places right around 15. They win that game 80-65, and then this was one where I felt like a statement was made. Florida just throughout was able to completely dominate against Auburn, 81-65, and quite frankly, it wasn't even that close. Florida only scored 6 points in the final 9-14 of this game. They got up 75-48. Auburn was just completely blown out of this game. For Florida, they only go 7-21 from 3, by the way, but they have Walter Clayton, Zion pulling in buckets with a combined 39 points, while Riley Kugel came off the bench for 22. Florida's really starting to put it together. They did have that tough loss against Texas A&M, but I know that's diminished because we'll get to it in a second. They go on the road, they knock off Kentucky, they had a nice win against Mississippi State. All of a sudden, it feels like Florida's starting to figure some things out. Meanwhile, Kentucky needs to go back to the drawing board. I had a DK Network write-up of Kentucky. I did not think that they were going to lose 3 straight at Rupp Arena, and they have now lost 3 straight at Rupp Arena for the first time since Pat Riley was a player for Kentucky. 89-86 the final, and Gonzaga only goes 4 of 18 from 3-point range, but Kentucky blasted on the glass. They lose that battle 43-31. You had Reed Shepard chip in there 21 points, but the big men, they did not play big, as you did not have a single player for Kentucky be able to give you 5+ rebounds. Meanwhile, you were able to have the likes of Anton Watson, Graham Ike, Ben Gregg. As a matter of fact, all 5 of their starters all chip in there at least 5 rebounds. So a massive win for Gonzaga, who's been having a rough go of it thus far this season. And for Kentucky, just a little bit of an inexplicable loss. This was a big loss as well, the loss of not having Kevin McCullough. As for Kansas, they get the win, but they don't get the cover. 64-61 was the final in this one. Baylor has been able to do a very solid job being able to cover the spread, by the way. Even with Kevin McCullough being out of the fold, they were still an underdog in a lot of places of right around about 5 points. So you're able to get there on that. 13-7-2 against the spread now for Baylor, as Baylor has really been declining with regards to their 3-point shooting. They only shoot about 31% in this one, 8 of 26, but they were able to do just enough to hold it in there with Yves Messi supplying 21 points, 8 rebounds, and for Kansas, they had to insert Nick Timberlake into the starting lineup. He had just 8 points in this one. As for Kansas, 5-21 from 3-point range. Defense was rock solid. Offense was leaving quite a bit of something to be desired, and leaving quite a bit of something to be desired the second half of St. John's. St. John's got up double figures against Marquette, and then they made like your buddy at the bar and could not close. Marquette, as a favorite about 7.5 points, they get it done against St. John's. This by a count of 86-75, and for Marquette, very impressive showing out at Tyler Kolek. He was able to throw in there 27 points, 7 boards, 13 assists, was by far the best player out there on the floor. St. John's does go 12 of 32 from 3-point range, but Marquette, thorough domination in this one, and then you're able to see some pretty good domination as well with regards to Iowa State just handling TCU. 71-59 the final. Iowa State 8 of 19 from 3-point range, just with Damon Lipsby and Keshawn Gilbert only combining for about 20 points and only shooting 2 of 7 from 3-point range. Team was really able to be a well-oiled machine. They win the turnover battle 12-10. They win in terms of just being able to force TCU into bad shots in general, and TCU went 8 of 16 at the free throw line as well. That did not help out their cause one bit, and it all depended upon your number in Houston versus Cincinnati. Houston gets the win. They were laying between 5 and 5.5 points. A lot of places had a 5.5 up there, so if you had the hook, that was a little bit unsightly for you. As for Houston, they're now 11-12-1 against the spread, but they've been a very solid team to the under, and this was a game where you saw that total come up to right around about a 130, 131 or so you should have been able to get an under there. But I mean, in terms of the ranked teams, it was very interesting, especially with UConn just blowing out Georgetown 89-64, but that was a little bit more of a, shall we say, to be expected result. We've given some love to a lot of the top teams, but if you're looking at the worst team in college basketball in terms of covering, that is currently a two-way tango. You've got Pacific, who's at 5-19 against the spread. It has been all sorts of grody for them as they went out there on their home floor and lost to San Diego 89-84. I know that a lot of places had this right around about a 4. I was seeing some 3s out there as well, and for San Diego, they were getting completely lambasted in the first half. As a matter of fact, Pacific was able to get up 13 points in the first half, and then Pacific, they were unable to close despite going 12 of 24 from 3, but what did them in, they lose the rebound battle 35-30, they lose the turnover battle 14-9 as well. St. Mary's, though, they just continue to roll. They completely take it to Portland. A Portland team has been pretty much sad and pathetic as well. 76-51 the final. This is a St. Mary's team that is just absolutely locking you down with regards to defense right now. For Portland, they're 10-14 against the spread, but you've also got another team that is currently 5-19 against the spread this season. That would be Missouri. And Missouri, they took it once again as they fall to Mississippi State on their home floor for yet another non-cover out of them, as final in this one lands on 75-51 for Missouri. Just 25 second half points in this one. They would deal with the injury to Sean East. He did not play in this one, and for Missouri, they had 16 made buckets and 20 turnovers. That tells you all that you need to know there, as Tolu Smith had a double-double for Mississippi State. It's been a little bit touch and go for them, but they were able to get it done. And another team in the SEC has been a rough cover team. That'd be Arkansas. And on a lot of closing lines, they were right around about a 3.5. And if you took this early, I was seeing some 2s out there. You were able to get there on them. If you took it late, it was a little bit more rough. As for Arkansas, they win by a count of 78-75, and it looked like they were really going to be able to separate in this game as well. Arkansas was able to get up double figures towards the early part of the second half, but Georgia, they were able to claw away, and for Arkansas, they go 17-26 at the free throw line. So a little bit less than savory there, and this has also been a team that has been less than savory, as we had Old Dominion in the Sun Belt versus MAC Challenge. I absolutely love that they did it. I wish it would have been a little bit more prominent because it got buried in just a sea of games that we were seeing. But for Old Dominion, they do fall to Central Michigan, this by a count of 58-57 as a 3.5 point favorite, and they now fall to a paltry 6-17-1 against the spread, as it has been just not their year. As for Old Dominion, they lose this game, by the way, going 11 of 23 from 3-point range, and on 2-point shots, they went 10 of 37. I am not quite sure how that works, but you know what? That's Old Dominion for you. You just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of them night in, night out. And this was a challenge that was very much dominated by the Sun Belt. James Madison, they continued their winning ways. They were able to get a win and cover over Akron by a count of 73-59. And James Madison, all of a sudden, after they were playing a harebrained with regards to their offense in the non-conference portion, they really slowed things down in conference. They're 14-9-1 against the spread, but your best cover team in the Sun Belt, that would be the Men of Troy, who are now 16-5-1 against the spread. They lay it on Kent State 78-68. Troy is a 5.5 point favorite, is able to get it done, and Miles Rigsby was able to give you 20 plus points. Troy only goes about 4 of 15 from 3-point range, but they were able to do a solid job winning the rebound battle in this one. And for Kent State, they themselves went just 8 of 25 from 3-point range. It's been a little bit of a rough season for them. The team that has not been covering out there in the Sun Belt, sans Old Dominion, of course, is Georgia Southern, and they lost in overtime to Buffalo 82-81. Not a good loss, to say the least, as this Buffalo team has now won 3 straight up games as far as this season, so that was not necessarily so spectacular. What was really the best game that we saw in the Sun Belt Challenge, double overtime between Appalachian State and Toledo. Appalachian State, they don't cover the 6.5, but they get it done 109-104, and in a game that involved 50 minutes of action, Appalachian State shot 60.5% from the floor. That is efficiency, my friends, as for Toledo, every one of their starters contributed at least 15 points for this effort, and in a double overtime game, Toledo only got 14 points off the bench. That is a little bit concerning, but that was another very fun one that we did see on Saturday. If you're looking at your top over teams in all of college basketball, that now belongs to Kentucky. I was mentioning how they have been just not good with regards to their last few games. They now have 18 overs to 5 unders after their game against Gonzaga went over the total, but you've got another team that has been very, very much hitting like wildfire to the over. That would be Denver. 17 overs of 5 unders for them thus far this season. They played another harebrained game. They took down St. Thomas Atomi's 94-77, and outfitting that for Denver, they've got the nation's top scorer, Tommy Burner. Honestly, was not the top scorer in this game, 18 points, but it was Jackson Brenchley, the transfer from the Pac-12, who chipped in there 25 points, 9 boards, 9 assists. A really good performance out of him, so Denver is able to maintain to the over. Wofford has been a very good over team. 16 overs to 6 unders for them, as in the Southern Conference in general has been featuring some very intriguing results. Samford just absolutely laid it on VMI 102-63, and for Wofford, they were actually able to get the job done against the Citadel 77-64, and a total that was 137.5. You needed a little bit of late game fouling to get there, but it was indeed able to get there. So Wofford just continues to be a really good over team for you in general. And Queens NC, our good friend Nick Lawrence, and I know that he plays a little bit of a part with regards to that coaching staff. They are now up to 18 overs and 6 unders, and rough if you took them on Saturday, as they were in full control in their game against Austin Peay. And then the Governors, they were able to storm the Capitol. As for Austin Peay, they win that game by kind of 79-76. For Queens NC, they were up in this one 67-53 with about 9 minutes and change remaining, and then they just could not close it out. As for Austin Peay, they go 55.5% from the floor. They turned the ball over just 6 times, and they were able to get it done, and they were able to get that game both over the total, as this was a closing total that you were finding in that neighborhood about 154.5, so it just barely goes over, and Austin Peay is able to get it done. Top 100 team in all of college basketball, that would be Dartmouth, but Dartmouth was able to play an over on Saturday. It wasn't really because they played great on offense, but they gave up 77 to Harvard, 77-59. Harvard able to get it done as they go 10 of 21 from three-point range. Luis Lesmond was able to go 4 of 8 from three-point range. The team was really struggling when you have Malik Mack out of the fold. The Mack attack is back. He goes 4 of 6 from three-point range as well, so that was a rough one for Dartmouth, but hey, they were at the very least able to get you an over. And then the 2 Illinois teams out there in the OVC have been very good to the under thus far this season as well. Western Illinois, 5 overs, 16 unders. They played another good hearty under against UT Martin, a UT Martin team that's one of the fastest teams in all of college basketball. 62-59, closing total of 145.5. Did not stand a chance in this one. As for Western Illinois, you did have 19 big points in this one, Josiah West, but really nobody else could throw the ball in the basket for them. And Eastern Illinois, they're able to get the cover against Morehead State, but they do get the under as well. This was a total of about 130.5, 69-57. Eastern Illinois covers a 15 or so, and they're able to land that game to the under as well. Another team that's been very good to the under as well, and it should make all sorts of sense. Vermont, one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. They were playing against UMBC, who looks really run and gun. Total was north of 145. This one went under. As for Vermont, they were really trailing big time in this game. As a matter of fact, they were down 25-5 midway through the first half. They were able to storm back. Shabir Bogues has been dealing with a little bit of an injury, but he was able to throw in their 23 points. For Vermont, they win this game despite going 6 of 30 from 3, as UMBC 8 of 16 from distance for them. So that was a very impressive showing on that front. And then another team has been very good to the under that went over on Saturday. That would be the Marist Red Foxes. As for Marist, they were able to put up a really nice expose against Rider, 77-62. They get the over and they get the win, as Marist was able to go 9 of 20 from three-point range as well. And then if you're just looking at a few other ins and outs of college basketball, I'm not able to tell you how Hawaii did, but it looks like they should be able to pull out that game. 3 minutes and change remaining against UC Davis, up high kind of 73-63. But you did see San Francisco get a win, but no cover against Santa Clara, 71-70. Being the final in that one. This has been a San Francisco team that has been pretty rock solid to the under and has been able to cover quite a few spreads thus far this season. That was one of the more fun games of the night, as Santa Clara in this one got up by a count of 39-23 before they just completely lost it. And they were up, by the way, by a count of 63-55 with 3 minutes and change remaining. So a big, giant stormback win there. And then you did see Stanford just absolutely lay it on a USC team that at this point they're looking about as dead gets. 99-68. Stanford just completely mollywallops them, going 19 of 38 from three-point range. For USC, they are now 10-14 against the spread. It honestly feels a whole heck of a lot worse than that, but been a rough year for them. And credit to Washington State going on the road, knocking off Oregon. That was a pretty good result for them, and this was also a pretty good result for Virginia, 80-76. When's the last time you've seen Virginia get to 80 points in a conference game? They got it done going 10 of 18 from three-point range, so they were able to get the cover there on what was a very, very fun day of college basketball. And if you're looking at just what we're seeing all across the landscape of college basketball, it has been really interesting from a trends perspective. It has been a year of overs all season long, and as we are sitting here right now with all the Saturday games and Hawaii game pending, right now overs sitting at 51.4% for the season. 2,077 overs to 1,966 unders. That's 51.4% to the over. Meanwhile, home underdogs, they're starting to make a little bit of a charge. 546, 556, and 18 against the spread overall for the season. And home and road teams are about 50-50 right now against the spread, by the way. 2009, 2006, and 73 against the spread are home teams. So, I mean, it literally doesn't get much more dead heat than that. But if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, home teams only hitting at about 48.9%, now. Well, home underdogs, they're starting to make that climb. 61-47-1 against the spread. It was a good day for home underdogs on Saturday, and it's been a solid last 7 days for overs as well. 168 overs to 163 unders with 6 pushes thrown in there. So that's what we're seeing trend-wise in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Saturday. Now let's turn it forward to Sunday, and let's react to a little bit of what we saw on Saturday as well with Justin Perri. He does great work over at Chalk Value Bets. We'll also highlight the top teams that we're seeing in college basketball right now, a few teams that he's feeling bullish and bearish on, as well, and so much more right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the BC Family Podcast. We're back to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beats Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man as Justin Perri. He does such good work over at Chalk Value Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know he is working hard to be able to find some edges in this wild and crazy game of college basketball, as we did have a wild and crazy Saturday out there in college basketball, and Justin, he does a great job of being able to decipher it all, no matter how sometimes difficult it can be to be able to do so. And I know that he's doing a nice job of being able to put numbers to what we are seeing with our eyes. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Justin Perri, the number 8 altogether. Last name is spelled Perri. And if you're on TikTok as well, just easy enough, at College Basketball Picks. Great handle there, and always great to be able to get you aboard, Justin. Thank you.
Greg, always a pleasure. Excited to be here. Excited to talk some college hoops. It was a awesome Saturday. Still so much action on these just crazy jam-packed days. It can sometimes take me like a few days after to really sort through all the results and all the big implications that we have across like all of the 30-plus conferences. I don't think any conference is sleeping. Just almost too many games. I bet also probably too many, but it has been a lot of fun. And I think there's some really important results setting up for some big scenarios come early March for conference tournaments and some bid bubble teams sort of distinguishing themselves here. It's the best time in college basketball, man. This last month leading up to Selection Sunday is the best.
It is absolutely tremendous. And Justin, I do need to get your thoughts on what we all saw out there in the SEC, as I thought that was one of the most interesting conferences that did take center stage on Saturday, because before we get to Kentucky and how big of a disappointment that's been and how sad and pathetic they are, how about a little bit of credit to this team in Florida? I know that they've been a team that you've been taking a look at quite a bit. What do we make out of a Florida bunch that they go out there, they absolutely pound the tar out of Auburn? Granted, the win that they were able to pull off over Kentucky a few weeks ago, it does look like it's diminished in value just a little bit, but they were able to knock off Kentucky about a week or so as well. And I take a look at this Florida bunch, and they're a team that's not ranked, but they're a team that's starting to catch my eye, and they're a team that I'm becoming a little bit warmer on.
Yeah, it's tough. This Auburn team away from home still has so many questions to answer, especially against elite competition. We've seen it time and time again. They struggle against these like top 50 teams away. I don't know. It's such a difficult problem to solve of whether you take that as the real performance versus maybe what you see at home or what you see in some of the neutral site games where they have looked really good. I tend to lean towards not giving too much credit to away losses in the SEC, especially because it is such a big home environment conference. I think teams tend to focus on getting home wins and, they get up for home wins while, look, Auburn was trailing early and the fight was just never there against this Florida team in the swamp, right? There's this name for it, the same thing with the jungle that Auburn has. It's not an easy environment to go play in. I think probably harder than it is to go and play in the tournament, where you will have at least, somewhat neutral. If anything, it would favor big name teams like Auburn, who have, wide, loyal, supportive fan bases that come out to games like that when their teams are strong. I tend to not give these types of losses in those spots, especially if they look pretty bad, like a little inflated or things like that. I'm not going to go ahead and take that final score as the end-all, be-all evaluative point for Auburn. I'm going to go look at the shots they took, were they still developing good offense, use some shot quality metrics, understand it's a hard place for some of those shots to fall. They deserve a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that when you see them dominating at home and then struggling on the road, that it's probably somewhere a little bit in the middle, and it's probably closer to what you see at home than it is for the difficulty on the road, because we know in college basketball it is hard to win road games, especially at the power conference level. It's hard.
Oh, it certainly is very hard. There's no question about it. And I just take a look at the whole SEC as a whole. And joining me on the show, we do have Justin Perri, who does great work over at Chalk Value Bets, and joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And it is one of the most interesting conferences to me in all of college basketball. I don't know what you're making out of it right now, but I mean, it was very fascinating to say the least that you saw Kentucky go down in a fiery heap against a Gonzaga team that in their previous road game, they were trailing at the half against Pacific. So that shows you just where this Kentucky team is right now. But Alabama has been a team that's really been coming onto my radar with the way that they have been playing so well as well. But I just take a look at this SEC as a whole, and I'm not sure what your overall opinion of it is, but I do feel like some of the top teams out there are some of the best that we're seeing in all of college basketball right now.
Oh, yeah. Alabama and Tennessee are definitely way up there. You know, obviously, we can talk about the questions surrounding Kentucky. It's a powerful, I think there's reason to think that we will see an SEC team make the Elite Eight this year. I don't know if those types of lines are offered by conference. That'd be a fun bet. But there's definitely reason to think that these teams are some of the best. We can take a look at the shot quality, really get a sense of what the expected numbers are. And, you know, we've talked about it a little bit before on the show, Greg, but shot quality numbers love Texas A&M, absolutely adore Texas A&M. So outside of Alabama and Tennessee and Auburn, probably Florida, rounding out that top four teams, I think you got to give Texas A&M a little bit of a nod, expecting them to be pretty potent. And they've had some difficulty, definitely a little unlucky right now in terms, especially relative to how we see top teams. But I definitely think that core four, Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, and Florida, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that one of those teams will be, you know, making it definitely Sweet 16, probably Elite Eight.
Yep, I do think so as well. And I take a look at these teams, and I'm so intrigued by what they're going to be able to bring moving forward. And when it comes to the SEC as well, we've been just noticing an uptick in offense as well. I'm not sure what you made out of the SEC, because last year we saw just these teams play super duper up tempo, but it just felt like it was brick after brick after brick. And this season, they're still keeping their up-tempo styles, but the overall shot making in the conference, it feels like it's as improved as any conferences out there in all of college basketball.
Yeah, it definitely has. And the level of play and the shooting, I think, is definitely contributing. And it used to be, like you said, just brick fests. It would be like, oh, well, take unders, like the totals were a lot lower. We've seen the respect for the level of play and the efficiency of play increase via totals. I think it's great. I would imagine as we get back into like conference tournament time and big games at the end of the season where results really start to matter for these seedings, and, you know, the teams that essentially need the AQ, these games will get so much more serious. I think we see a little bit more of, they revert back to that slow rock fight style. And maybe as we get into the end of February and early March here.
Yep, I do think that we could be seeing a lot of that as well. As joining me on the show, we've got Justin Perri, who does tremendous work over at Chalk Value Bets, and he is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to really the hierarchy of college basketball, I know that a team that you've been looking at as really one of your favorite teams in all of college basketball is Houston, with the way that they absolutely swarm on defense. It's been a little bit difficult for them in their road games recently, but this has been a team that has been dominant at home. They got the job done against Cincinnati in a game where hopefully if you took Houston, you were able to lay a 5 and not a 5.5, as that was a nip and tuck game. But where are you at in terms of some of these top teams in college basketball? Because I know you've been very much in on Houston, but I just still look at what Purdue has done, and we're doing this prior to knowing what they were able to do against Indiana on Saturday. But they're a team that they just consistently, time and time again, when I watch them, I'm impressed by them, and I'm starting to think that they might be the team to beat once again when it comes to the NCAA tournament.
I've always been on the Houston train. You're right. They're a team that has consistently graded really well in terms of what we do over at SQ. Force a heck of a lot of turnovers, man. It is a tough defense. And that is the stuff, I think, that four factors at the end of the day. You can do all this advanced stuff, but if your turnover rates and you're not shooting enough threes, all that, you know, good stuff, your rebounding rates, if you don't have those types of things set, you're not attacking the paint enough, opening up the floor enough, you're not going to do it. And Houston doesn't really leave any stone unturned. They force their will upon everybody. They slow games down, yet they are super effective at converting. So like when you have less possessions and then they're forcing turnovers on your few possessions and then they don't turn it over, So they're like top 10 in turnover rate on both sides of the ball, slow it down, efficient shooting threes, run the pick and roll incredibly well, which, we know is one of the most effective ways to open up space. It's done much more at the pro level because it requires high level talent. You're often going to take mid-range jump shots, which they have the proficiency to do, kick out to these threes. They have the proficiency to do it. It can look professional. And there's not many teams you say that about. I think, definitely not count them on one hand, teams that can look as effective as Houston can. It's just a little bit of a matter of time and luck until they can string together the 6 wins come March. And that's what it comes down to. It's hard to win 6 games in a row. You have to both outperform your norms and also hope that your opponent doesn't, and hope that you get a little lucky and the bounces fall your way. There's no championships that don't have bounces fall their way. It just doesn't really happen. That's a firm belief of mine. And if you disagree, and you can find a few cases, I'm sure there's a few, but especially in college basketball, if this team doesn't miss this shot on this day, leading to this seeding, this team getting this foul, it all happens like that, right? Like we can look back to just recently last season with FAU Memphis, and where does that game lead if a late foul isn't called? It's crazy. It's a crazy sport. So I do think, circling back here, that Houston's time where the stars will align will come, and they actually, possess a higher probability of that, perfect pathway, perfect play, and, not too many bad foul calls to happen more than other teams. So yeah, I'm definitely on Houston. It's a tough team to get a good price on, but if they struggle or if they have a down month, you can just pick up a decent price, or you just want to ride with the bandwagon favorite that deserves it, it's Houston. The Cougars, they are legit. They can do everything. And like I said, they eat away at your possessions. They don't turn it over. They slow it down, and they can shoot. It's cool to watch.
It is really fun to watch. And I mean, both of the teams I mentioned, Purdue, Houston, they do it in different ways. But at the same time, I look at those 2 teams, and they really do feel like the creme de la creme out there in college basketball as the creme de la creme. When it comes to taking a look at college basketball, that'd be Justin Perri. He's going to be right here on Cuz Hoops. And Justin, when it comes to teams that maybe I have not mentioned yet that you are feeling a little bit more stock up, stock down on, or a few that come to mind before we do take a look at a few games that we've got for Sunday?
Yeah, well, we actually have some great analysts over at Shot Quality that pay attention to our awesome mid-majors. It's mid-major season. You want to know about how these teams are doing. I always have that personal opinion. There's so much information on the power conferences. Those are the sharpest lines. Like playing on the mid-major conferences and low major conferences is really where you can get some value, honestly. So, recently, I think Boise State is making a lot of noise. I'm watching them. They've looked really good. Nevada had some big results, another big home win on a slow Friday. Bradley battling Drake as we record. That's a fascinating one. Of course, Drake's kind of had their number in the Missouri Valley, but Bradley's been on their way up, and they have revenge on their mind come conference tournament time. So I'm definitely looking for those teams. Big wins. Yale is starting to really look like the team that's coming out of the Ivy for me. So you want to take futures on them. I think Princeton is going to be a little susceptible. I like Yale a lot. I would be shocked if that's not the final for the Ivy League tournament, Yale Princeton. And then Louisiana Tech just continues to run the table. I believe that's the Sun Belt. I could be wrong. And
Louisiana Tech is actually Conference USA.
Oh, thank you, sir. I got there.
Miley Cyrus's favorite conference. It's a party in Conference USA.
So those two get me sometimes. I don't know why. The Sun, because it's like that Middle Tennessee conference. Yeah, I could definitely think Middle Tennessee's also in the Sun Belt, but they are Conference USA. But there's also been a lot of dancing around in those conferences over the years, so you got to give me a little bit of a pass. Yeah, no, I think those are some really interesting teams in the mid-majors I'm keeping my eye on. Mountain West is crazy. I barely handicap the conference. I wouldn't put too much stock into them. We see it every year. We give them all this credit. They look great in the non-con. They beat each other up. And then they get to the tournament and the March Madness and they can't win. It's really only been San Diego State with their wins as a conference the last few years. And you just don't see them exit the first round. So I'd be weary on getting too affectionate with the top of the Mountain West. Like I said, that Boise State team, I don't trust Utah State. I don't trust San Diego State. I don't trust Colorado State. But Boise State for the price, you got to remember, everything I always talk about is for the price. So yeah, for the price, I think Boise State is worth it. For what you're going to get on those other teams at the top with rankings who've been there before, yeah, I just don't trust it coming out of the Mountain West. But take a peek at some of those other ones. I love trying to find those Cinderella teams, and someone like Yale, someone like Louisiana Tech. Those teams are going to give a good team some trouble. Boise State could, be a very dangerous double-digit seed if they get in with the strength or the perceived strength of the Mountain West. So we'll see. It's going to be a fun end of the year. It's like I said at the top, best time of the season. Everything starts getting really interesting. Teams start really going different directions. Some teams, their seasons are over. Some teams might not even be making conference tournaments with how they're playing. So it's going to be fun to try to start evaluating motivations, chemistries, matchups, everything at once now. And then, we're going to blink. We're back here talking about, how we're going to be filling out our brackets. I love it. February basketball, baby.
February basketball is always so much fun, and it is always fun to take a look at what we get on Sundays as well. It's a limited Sunday slate, Justin, but we got to give the people a little bit of a sweat prior to the Super Bowl. And are there any games in particular that really do catch your eye for Sunday, as most of these obviously are going to be played very early? We no longer have that random Pac-12 game that we had the last few years after the Super Bowl. None of that this year, but is there a game or two, because we mostly have the American, the Big Ten, and the Big East that come to the forefront on Sunday? Anything really standing out to you?
I know you have the same gripe about the scheduling and
yeah,
barely going to get past 10 games. And that's okay. I think there's some interesting ones at the top. We're going to have Seton Hall, Villanova. That's a game I think we're going to see a lot of up and down with Villanova right now. There's a lot of talk, of course, about what the heck's going on. This transfer of the coaching job to Neptune from Jay Wright is going horribly. They at home here, I think it's going to look a lot like that Providence game. They just handed it to Providence. There was all this effort. They need to get these types of wins. I expect the games against the home games remaining to be very, very high for Villanova, this entire team, as they prove things. Kyle Neptune driving it into his players. He needs that leash, maybe as a more level-headed college basketball person and not a Villanova fan. I think you got to give the guy some time. I don't expect the Villanova team to bow out of the season. I expect them to fight hard every single game. So, yeah, I'm going to lean Nova at home. I don't know if there's a lineup yet, but
seeing them as 4.5-point favorite.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's kind of cheap, honestly. I think you're probably getting a good value there. I'll likely be thinking Villanova that continues to come down, especially. I do think they can get this win. Seton Hall is a good squad. Don't get me wrong. Their offensive rebounding percentages have looked really great. They're a difficult team, but they've seen DePaul and Georgetown, and before that, obviously won both those games pretty easily. Georgetown actually at home kept it within 6, but 3 straight losses before that to some of the top teams. This is going to be a battle with Villanova, first meeting of the season. I do think they could maybe struggle here. They've gotten some big away wins. I don't really count DePaul and Georgetown, but they did beat Butler and Providence on the road. It's hard to continue to do that in the Big East. And again, coming off of 2 nice wins, this could be another stumble spot against a very, very motivated team in Villanova. It's a Sunday. Yeah, I'll be leaning Nova there for sure. I think that'll be a fun one. And then nothing else really catches an eye. I think, FAU is going to Wichita. I expect FAU to handle that and probably break down Wichita. If that Memphis team was able to engineer a comeback, expect Florida Atlantic to be able to also put together some pretty dominating game clinching type runs. So if you're getting under 10 points, which I assume we are, I will be on FAU. UAB is going to be at Tulsa. I don't know how you can stay off of UAB right now. They're hot. They're a wagon. They look good. So I like that UAB team. They've always had talent. The play style resonates in terms of just being effective. So a few teams there. That's going to be a fun battle at Tulsa, but I do think UAB shows up. And this entire conference, man, the AAC is honestly really fun this year. This Charlotte team that just took that first or second loss in conference season after winning 8 straight is now on the road against Temple. I tend to think they maybe take out some of that frustration against Temple, who covered the line against Memphis and could pretty easily be in a spot to struggle here against a good Charlotte team. That Charlotte team is so much fun. If you haven't watched them play, I think you definitely want to go see how they are honestly looking. New coach, new system. Feels like the entire program's been flipped. They might win this conference. And they move really slow, so it's cool to watch. I know that they almost resemble Houston, but, in mid-majors.
I was about to say, Charlotte was a very slow team last year. They've been a slow team this year, but they're just all the more effective this year as well. So I'm so glad that you brought them up. And Justin, I know that you're doing such an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. You are hard at work taking a look at everything that we are getting on these 100 million billion game college basketball Saturdays and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
For sure. Thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity to come on the show, talk a little bit about SQ and the numbers. We are grinding hard on these live plays. We do live betting a little differently than maybe anybody else. We have our own in-play regression algorithm, meaning we essentially evaluate the expected point value of every single shot into like decimal points, and then can understand the direction in which the regression is more likely to occur. So if teams are hot, we identify that. We can identify teams being cold, essentially can say, oh, well, when we say a team's cold, it means they should be doing better for sure. Like, that's the beauty of it. So it's been really successful in live betting. And, if that sounds cool, if you like the data, definitely come check it out. We do a show 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, where we put it on full display and we bet just like maniacs for 45 minutes. It's a blast. So I think we're going to change the way live betting is done across the entire industry. I think we already maybe have, but definitely recommend checking it out. Is the thing I am most excited about with my job right now, which is a blessing every single day to get to talk sports with guys like you, Greg.
It is absolutely a blessing to have people like you aboard too, Justin. As Justin Perri, he does such a good job over at Chalk Value Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And every single time he joins the show, he lends such good insights, and his time is always appreciated. A big thanks to Justin for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. It is always great to get Justin Perri aboard. He does such amazing work over at Chalk Value Bets, taking a look at this sport that we all know and love, doing a great job of being able to put some numbers of what we are seeing out there on the hardwood. And every time he joins this show, we always seem to get just a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Justin for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at UNN_41. We do not have any games on the extra board, so this is just all straight up going right down in time order, so that'll be able to keep things very clean, very easy, and very, very much to the point. So let's get things started with 843, 844 on the betting board. It is Villanova, and they're going to be playing us to Seton Hall. Seton Hall is a underdog of 4.5 points. Total on this game is anywhere between 130.5 and 131. I do think that we've went a little bit too low with this total. I set my total at a 133.5. This Villanova bunch, they're solid on defense, and they are a slow team. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily amazing on defense, and just with the way that the spread is, because I personally made Villanova 5.5 point favorite. Books had this at 4.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay a Villanova, but if you have a 4 to 5 point game with a minute remaining, there's a good likelihood of being able to get some late game fouling in. That's where Villanova can come through for you, because Villanova is one of the best free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. They have been the last few years. They are once again shooting north of 81.5% of the free throw line, with only turning the ball over 9.8 times per contest. So even though this is a team that they play slow, they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. You've got Tyler Burton, Eric Dixon down low, being able to supply you with a combined about 13 rebounds per game. So I do think that they're going to do a solid job on the glass, so Seton Hall is going to have the advantage there. Jaden Bediako has been able to do a very solid job for the Seton Hall team, being able to haul in their 8 rebounds per game. And then you've got Kadari Richmond, who just does it all for the Seton Hall bunch. He gives you 16 points. He throws in there about 5 assists, 6 or so rebounds per game. So, he's been a stat sheet sufferer other than being able to pop threes. And when it comes to the Seton Hall bunch, you do have Elmir Dawes, Trey Davis combined shoot for about 34.5% from three-point range between the two of them. Both of them do give you about 14 to 14.5 points per contest. So that is going to be a little bit difficult for this Villanova team to match up with. That said, I do think that Villanova is going to do an okay job of being able to cut off the three-point line with Justin Moore being able to give you more in the backcourt. That is big against a Seton Hall team in which they do experience some difficulty with regards to their defense when they do leave home. This is a Seton Hall team that has been giving up well more than 10 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside-neutral court environment rather than when they are at home. And this is a Seton Hall team that they themselves have been very inconsistent with regards to their offense when they have been away from home. This is a Seton Hall team that is only shooting as a collective about 32% from three. They should be able to have a little bit of success against Villanova in this spot, which is why I do like this total over. That said, I do think that Villanova finds a way to be able to exploit a Seton Hall team that has been giving up the three-point line a little bit more than what you'd expect. This is a Seton Hall team that is outside the top 125 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and just in terms of raw points allowed on a per-possession basis, Seton Hall about 93rd in all of college basketball. We've got a Villanova team that they're clocking in more in that neighborhood of about 68th in the country, only giving up 1.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're in a roadside shoot corner environment rather than when they are at home. So did somebody total 133.5, went over and one to lay up to 5 with Villanova. 845, 846 on the betting board. Wichita State, they do play as Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, a 7.5 to an 8-point favorite. So on this game, going to be fighting that between a 148.5 and a 149.5, and circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take the points with Wichita State did set them as a 7-point underdog. With Florida Atlantic, it just all comes down to the defensive side of things and the fact that they just have not been able to get it going on that front. They've been a little bit better recently, but every single time you think that Florida Atlantic has figured it out on defense, they have not. They're outside the top 170 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and they're only about 113th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. They have had their struggles away from home, giving up 11 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than at home. Now, the good news for them is that they are going up against a Wichita State unit that they really have not shot it well from three-point range. They're shooting about 31% from distance. Kobe Rogers has done a nice job of being able to throw it in there. He's been able to give the team 15-plus points per contest, and you may recall last time these two teams played, Wichita State, they either had a lead or they were right there against Florida Atlantic at the half. As a matter of fact, they led by double figures at the half before things just really unraveled for them in the last few minutes of that game. But Kobe Rogers at 18 in that one, and this is a Wichita State team that's going to be able to hold their own on glass as well. You've got 4 separate guys for this Wichita State team that supply at least 6 rebounds per game, and Kenny Poto, Quincy Ballard, Dallin Reginald, so they're rock solid down low with Ballard also giving you about 2.3 blocks per contest. The Roundhouse, it's a very difficult place to play. There's a lot of travel for an early AM game with this one as well for Florida Atlantic, and it's been a Florida Atlantic team that throughout the season they've been able to win a lot of these American Conference games. They haven't covered a lot of them. It is a Florida Atlantic team that once again they're about 57th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Vladislav Golden has been able to do a really good job supplying 7 boards. He's able to give you about a block and a half per game, and then with Florida Atlantic you've got John L. Davis who just throws it in there, 19 points per contest, shoots 48% from 3. And Florida Atlantic as a whole, they're a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and pretty much all but one player that is averaging north of 4.5 points per game that has made at least 1 3 is shooting at least 34.9% from 3-point range. So Elijah Martin, it's been a little bit hot and cold recently, but I do think that Florida Atlantic, they're going to be able to supply some offense, but I think that this is going to be much of what we saw the first time around. Very much a high-powered offensive game. I do think that Wichita State going to find ways to be able to exploit what has been a rough Florida Atlantic defense to be able to hold in there, and I think that this is close enough for late game falling to be able to help you out with the total as well. So I may total 151 looking over, and when it comes to Florida Atlantic, go ahead and make them a 7-point favorite, so we're going to take 8 with Wichita State. 847, 848 on the betting board. Northwestern is going to be playing against Penn State, and Penn State does find themselves as a underdog of 8 points. So your total on this game, it is between 147.5 and 148, and with Penn State, I did set them as an underdog of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 8 with Northwestern. The offense has honestly been very efficient recently. They're a top 20 team in all of college basketball. There's fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, so they're flowing things very cleanly, but for Northwestern, they've really had a tough time just being able to D things up. 197th in all of college basketball, the regards points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's not as if this Penn State team is some sort of world beater on defense either. They're 154th, and I will say for Penn State, even though in terms of raw points allowed on a per possession basis, they're a little bit better. They do see a drop off, giving up about 18.2 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. So it's going to become a battle of, can this Penn State team generate turnovers, or can Northwestern, one of the best teams at being able to take care of the ball, be able to continue to do so? Because Northwestern, they just are not good on the glass. You've got one guy that gives you north of 3.9 rebounds per game. That would be Brooks Barnheiser, 14.5 points, 6 half boards. Big reason why this Northwestern team, they are well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Not like this Penn State team does a lot on the glass either. Kudus Wahaba will be able to give you about 7 to 8 rebounds per game, but Penn State is 325th with regards to their rebound rate, so they're even worse than Northwestern. And Northwestern can just flat out bomb from 3-point range. They shoot 39.6% from 3-point range. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball, going up against a Penn State team that, when they don't generate a turnover, much like a lot of these teams that do have these high-octane styles, they just don't hit the glass whatsoever. Though I will say, unlike a lot of them, they actually do guard the arc. They are 39th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Northwestern, they are outside the top 300, and you've been able to get some good production out of your Penn State backcourt. Ace Baldwin is able to give you double figures. He's an inconsistent shooter, but you've got Kanye Cleary, who's been able to give you about 39% three-point shooting. He's able to throw in there about 18 points per game. So with Northwestern, it's really been a leaky defense. Penn State is looking to make things harebrained, and even if Northwestern is able to take care of the ball, they might not be able to get as many open looks as they're accustomed to, which is a big reason why I did set my total at a 146.5. I also think that it's going to be hard for both of these teams with the way that they don't rebound to generate second chances. So this is a circumstance where at the 147.5 to 148, I'm looking at the under. Northwestern likes to slow things down well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game. And when it comes to this Penn State squad, made them a 6.5 point underdog, so I'm willing to take 8 with them. 849, 850 on the betting board. You've got UAB on the road facing off against Tulsa, and Tulsa is an underdog of 2.5 points. Your total on this game is 155.5. When it comes to Tulsa, I did set them as the underdog in the spot of 3 points. 2.5 is the absolute max I'm willing to lay with UAB, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Tulsa's defensive numbers, they're just a big giant Medusa. They're very misleading. Tulsa, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, still 102nd in all of college basketball. They're giving up well north of 16 points more per 100 possessions in conference play rather than they did in non-conference play. The big reason why they've got a big home and road split, giving up about 18.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than a road/shoot-court environment, is because if I were to give you guys video of this podcast, I would need to hold up a cupcake to represent the non-conference schedule for Tulsa. Just playing against teams like Central Arkansas, playing against the dregs of the SWAC and everything like that. So they really built their numbers up on sand, and now that they're playing good teams, they're getting absolutely exposed. Now the good thing for Tulsa is that they're going up against a UAB team that they really don't bomb it from 3-point range. UAB is a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, and it's not like this UAB team has been some sort of a world beater on defense either. They are outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but with that said, this is a UAB team that they're doing a good job on the glass. Top 45 team in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate. Yaxel Lenborg has been able to do a really good job of being able to give 10 boards per contest and rebound rate on the offensive side of things. So that's generating second chances. They are able to rebound north of 32% of their misses in terms of an offensive rebound, and it's really a whole greater than some of its parts approach for UAB. After last year, they had Jelly Walker. Now you've got 5 separate guys that are able to give you between 10.1 and 12.3 points per contest, with Lenborg really helping things out down low. But you've also got Javion Davis, who's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. It's a UB team that they only shoot about 31.5% from 3, and where Tulsa's really shined has been locking down the 3-point line. They've actually been one of your better teams in all of college basketball at being able to guard the arc on the inside, is where you can really hurt this team, because this is a Tulsa bunch that they do have their issues in terms of being able to hit the glass. So even though they've got a nice home court advantage here, this is a Tulsa team that's 277th with regards to overall rebound rate. So UAB should be able to win the battle there. And on top of that, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, Tulsa's more around 175th in all of college basketball with that regard. And UAB, they're right there. They're about 176th for a leaky UAB defense going up against a Tulsa team that they've been able to get really good production out of PJ Haggerty, who's been able to give you between about 19.5 to 20 points per contest. It's a Tulsa team that they shoot about 33.5% from 3, but they get loose with it. 13.5 turnovers per game. This is not the same UAB team that was generating a bunch of turnovers a season ago, but with UAB having the nice rebounding advantage, with Tulsa playing at warp speed themselves, they're in the top 45 to top 50 with regards to total possessions per game. UAB, they're still consistently playing fast. I do think that you get a high-scoring expose. I set my total 159. You could be close enough for late game fouling, so looking at the over. And with UAB, made them a 3-point favorite, so want to lay 2.5 with them. 851, 852 on the betting board. Temple, we give our Odelaine Kiffin. Go Owls. They are going to be playing against Charlotte, and Charlotte does find themselves as a favorite of 4 points. Your total on this game, and between 131.5 and 132, and with Charlotte, I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. With regards to Charlotte, this has been a squad that has really done a nice job of being efficient on offense while not getting out of control. They are well outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game, but they just do such a smart job in general of being able to find a way to get good shots. They shoot 76% at the free throw line. Their three-point shooting is not magnificent. Igor Milicic is really the lone guy on the roster that shoots about 35% from three. He stands right around 6'9", 6'10", 13 points, 8.5 boards, shoots 38% from three, but they turn the ball over just 9.5 times per game. Lucio Patterson, Nick Raves, they've done a good job doling out about 5.5 assists to 2.3 turnovers per game, so I absolutely love what these guys have been able to do, and they're going up against a Temple team that's outside the top 240 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Heisier Miller has been really the lone guy that has been able to produce offense for the team. He's supplying the team with about 14 points, 4 assists for a bunch that's currently shooting 29.5% per three, and as a matter of fact, your top 4 scorers for Temple, they are all shooting below 30% from three-point range, other than Micah Piccarelli, the UMBC transfer that's able to give you 8 points per contest. You really don't have anyone on the roster that's shooting north of 35% from three-point range, and it's not like this Temple team makes do by being amazing on the glass or anything like that. They're 259th in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate. Not to say that the Charlotte team is like monsters of the Midway when it comes to being able to just pound the glass or anything like that, but Charlotte more on 175th in all of college basketball with this regard. It's a Temple team that they do generate some steals. Each of their top 4 scorers, they are able to give you at least 1 steal per contest, but I mean, it's really been a Temple team that's been lacking in the backcourt for Temple. The big key for them is trying to be able to hold teams down from three-point range, but at home, they're actually far worse at guarding the arc than they are on the road. On the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot 30.7% from three. At home, that goes to 37% from the outside, and I do think that the Charlotte team, that they do a really nice job just knowing their style, not getting out of control, that this is an incredibly good matchup for them against a Temple team that really doesn't check any boxes very well, and the Charlotte team, they're 28th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and it travels. So I did set Charlotte as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. So I told at 127.5. I flat out just don't think that Temple does their part with this total. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Charlotte. 853, 854 on the betting board. SMU plays those to North Texas. The Mean Green are an underdog of 5 points. Total is 128.5. North Texas continues to be a bottom 25 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, and I did set my total at a 128.5. So we're going to be looking for a little bit of line movement here. This is one that when it opened up in a lot of faraway places, it was more around a 127 to a 127.5. So if we can get back to that 127.5, I'm going to be looking over, because even though this SMU team is a top 40 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and boy oh boy, this SMU team just absolutely guards the arc there, 5th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. For one, I do think that they're doing for a little bit of regression with regards to that three-point shooting defense, and for two, it is an SMU team that all of a sudden they've been playing a little bit more up-tempo. If you look at their overall season numbers, this is a team that it would be representative of not necessarily a snail or anything like that to the tune of North Texas, who they're just looking to slow everything down, but I mean, they're about 223rd in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but they've been speeding themselves up a little bit more recently, and this has been an SMU team that has been able to put points up on the board recently. You take a look at their last 5 games, the team has gotten to at least 72 points in all but one of them, and that was a 68-66 game that they played against North Texas. So that was a game that went over, in a game where you didn't have a lot of shot attempts, but both teams were able to get to the free throw line. As a matter of fact, North Texas went 8 of 19 at the free throw line, and the game still went over. And for North Texas, the big key for them is being able to do a solid job down low against an SMU team that, well, you don't have that one dominant rebounder, sans perhaps Samuel Williamson, who's able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. It's a whole greater than the sum of its parts rebounding approach that has been pretty dominant all season long. SMU 32nd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. This is a North Texas bunch that they find themselves right around 80th to 81st. Robert Allen has been able to do a solid job supplying 7.5 rebounds per game. I still like Mule Sissoko. He's not giving you a lot of scoring whatsoever with about 3.5 points, but he gives you 5+ rebounds per game. Now you get Rondell Walker back in the fold. He comes in from Oklahoma State and TCU. Not a scorer at all, but he's giving you 5+ rebounds per game. So I do think that North Texas does a solid job there. And this North Texas team, they do turn the ball over 11.5 times per game, which doesn't sound like much, but with that ridiculously slow tempo, that is actually quite a few. But they do shoot 36% from three-point range, with Jason Carson Edwards really being your man to be able to supply some good shots from the outside. He's been able to shoot overall about 34.5% from three. He's given the team 18 points per contest. And then you've got a pair of guys in Aaron Scott and Reuben Jones who have been able to combine for about 24 points per game. This is a team that has a lot of good top-end talent. They've been dealing with the injury to Reuben Jones. As a matter of fact, the last time he played was the last time these two teams hooked up. So we shall see if he's going to be good to go here. But even if he's not, you've been able to get some reinforcements with the buggy man, John Buggs III, returning after he was missing for a little bit of time to begin the season, and he's shooting 43% from three-point. So even though you've got two very slow teams, these are a pair of teams that have really been able to ascend with regards to their offense. With SMU, you do have some inconsistent three-point shooting with, it seems, Reek Phelps does give you 14.5 points per contest, but really other than Chuck Harris, who shoots 41.5% from three, you don't have a lot of reliable three-point shooting options, but I do think that in the end, you are going to be able to see SMU do just enough on the glass to be able to get the job done, but not necessarily be able to cover this number in a game that I think is going to be very nip and tuck. I set my number at 4.5, so here at the 5, going to be looking at the points with North Texas, and I did set my total at 128.5. If we can get back to that 127.5, 128, going to be looking at the over, and I'm going to be taking a look at the 5+ here with North Texas. 855, 856 on the betting board. It is our good friends Tulane on the road facing off against Memphis. Memphis is an 8.5 point favorite. The last game is between 166 and 167. Memphis has covered one home game thus far this season, and I don't think that this is going to be number 2. I set my line at 6. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Tulane. Now, neither of these teams is really playing a whole heck of a lot of defense whatsoever, but I do think that in this sort of a circumstance, you are getting some pretty good value on a Tulane team that, while they don't necessarily have great depth, they do have good front-end talent, and they do a much better job of being able to protect the ball rather than Memphis. These are two very high-octane teams. Both of these teams rank in the top 50 with regards to total possessions per game, but Memphis, they turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest. Tulane, more around 10.5 times per game. And for Tulane, they do have each other top 3 scorers, Jalen Forbes, Zion James, along Kevin Cross, all being able to combine for about 4.5 steals per contest. You've got James shooting 41% from 3, 14 points per contest. Cross is able to hit the glass, being able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, and despite the fact that Nequan Tomlin has come into the fold, he's been able to give Memphis a little bit of something down low, and Davy Jones should be legitimately the best player in this game. 20+ points, 6+ boards. He has been absolutely tremendous for Memphis. This team has not really dominated the glass the way that you would expect for Memphis. They're about 171st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Now, Tulane is even worse. Tulane just gets absolutely bludgeoned on the glass as they are outside the top 275 with regards to their rebound rate. That said, with this Tulane team, what they make up for with that is just being able to take care of the ball, being able to generate those turnovers, and they've been able to get some good production recently out of Colin Hallways. Now, give you 12.5 points per contest. He's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, going up against a Memphis team that have had their issues of being able to guard the three-point arc, and legitimately both of these teams have had issues there. Tulane, in a roadside-shoot-court environment, they do allow opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range, and this is a Memphis squad that they're going to give you some open looks as well. They're about 186th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Javon Quinterly has been able to do a solid job, give you 4+ assists per contest for this Memphis team, but you just want to see a little bit more out of some of these ancillary guards, because while Davy Jones has been one of the best scorers in all of college basketball, you just haven't seen a lot of these guys be able to step up. Caleb Mills is right now dealing with an injury. Jaquan Walton has been able to give you about 9 points per contest. What are you going to be able to get out of guys like Nick Jordan and company? They've had some good top flight guys. They haven't necessarily had those ancillary pieces to be able to step up, and I do think that you get very much an up and down game in this one. Neither of these teams is really playing a lick of defense. You saw one good defensive performance from Memphis against Wichita State about a week ago. Sans that, it's been a very sad display to say the least. I did set my total as a result more around a 166. I do think that once you get a 166.5, 167, we went just a little bit too far, just because I don't think that there's going to be a lot of second chance buckets for these teams. So here at the 167, I'm looking under, but going to be willing to take the points with Tulane. Made them a 6-point dog. 857, 858 on the betting board. UMass is going to be playing us to Rhode Island, and Rhode Island is an underdog of 12 points. Their total on this game is between 154.5 and 155, and with UMass, I did set them as a favorite of 12 points. I'm seeing an 11.5 out there. I'm going to be willing to lay that. The opener on this game was 11, and when it comes to UMass, this team just does such a good job of being able to execute in so many different ways. With UMass, this is a top 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. They do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers. A top 50 team in all of college basketball in that regard, and this is a Rhode Island team that had a nice triumph earlier in the week against George Washington, but in terms of a road and neutral court environment, they're a bottom 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. They've been able to get it going from 3-point range. They're actually shooting about 35.6% from 3-point range. Problem is, you're going up against a UMass team that has been able to do a very solid job of being able to lock you down from 3-point range at home, allowing opponents to shoot 32.5% from 3-point range at home. And when they're away from home, that really does get away from them. They shoot about 36.5% from 3, opponents do against UMass on a roadside neutral court environment, but at home, they've been able to do a good job on that front end. When it comes to this Rhode Island team, they are just getting gashed on defense. They are outside the top 340 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a roadside neutral court environment, giving up well north of 16 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Now, they have been able to get a nice boost out of David Green, who's been able to come into the fold and give this team some production, but interestingly, he misses a game against George Washington after being really the team's top scorer since he joined them, and all of a sudden, Zeke Montgomery, Jaden House, they actually did look a little bit better in that game. These are two guys that combined to shoot about 32% from 3. House has been your top scorer with about 15 points per contest, but I'm not sure how long-lasting that's going to be. And for Rhode Island, I just don't think that they're going to be able to do a good job down low, having to go up against Josh Cohen along that cross. We're combining for about 15 boards per contest. Cohen has been able to shoot 36.5% from 3, and it is a UMass team that, if you do have a little bit of trepidation here, they shoot less than 70% at the free throw line as a collective, but they do a nice job of taking the ball away. Rhode Island does a bad job in a roadside neutral court environment of being able to take care of the ball. This Rhode Island team has been getting sped up quite a bit recently, as for Rhode Island, it's been a bunch that has really been giving up the points. They hold George Washington at 65 a few nights ago, but past that, in a roadside neutral court environment, this has been a team that has been giving up 70 plus on the regular. Meanwhile, you've got a UMass team that has been able to do a better job on defense themselves. They've now given up 73 or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games, but this is a UMass team that they do a nice job of being able to generate points off of their defense. I think that they're going to be able to do so here against Rhode Island, being able to develop those live ball turnovers and be able to get the job done against Rhode Island, though. I do think that the sloppiness of Rhode Island is going to prevent you from being able to get an over in this spot, especially with the way that UMass is much better at being able to guard the perimeter at home rather than in a roadside neutral court environment. So I did set my line at 12. I'm going to be willing to lay the 11.5 with UMass, and did set my total 154. Now that we're getting to a 155, we're just starting to get to my buy point on the under to go along with UMass. 859, 860 on the betting board. Louisiana is going to be playing us to Bowling Green, and Bowling Green does find themselves as an underdog of 7 to 7.5 points. So now this game is 150 to 151. I did set Bowling Green as an underdog of 7 points. So here at 7.5, that's my buy point on them. This Bowling Green team has actually been able to do a really solid job of just speeding themselves up and being able to be efficient while speeding themselves up. They're a top 125 team in all of college basketball. The regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, this team has not really been fazed by road trips, and I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job on the glass against a Louisiana team that, really, other than Joe Charles, who's been able to give you between about 8.5 to 9 rebounds per game, they just haven't had a lot on the glass. This Louisiana team, in terms of their rebound rate, that is their big kryptonite. They're about 210th in all of college basketball in that regard. Bowling Green more around 128th, and for Bowling Green, they do have a nice takeover scorer. Marcus Hill is supplying 21.5 points, not shooting it well from 3-point range. Just Bowling Green as a whole, they do shoot just 31.5% from the outside, but Jason Spurgeon has been able to give you 6 boards, 11.5 points, a little bit over a block per contest. You've been able to get about 9 boards out of Rashawn Agee as well, and then for Bowling Green, this team has been able to get quite a bit more out of some of the ancillary pieces as well. They were dealing with the injury to Trey Thomas, and he's come back to be able to give the team about 12 points, 3 assists, a steal and a half per contest. So I like the way that Bowling Green has been able to fortify themselves there. Now for Louisiana, they're going to do a nice job of being able to cut Bowling Green off from the 3-point line. Top 30 team with regards to 3-point shooting defense, while they themselves do shoot 36.5% from the outside. You've had Kobe Julian do a nice job of being able to just run this offense, 18.5 points, 5 boards, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range, while Famous Folks is more of your floor general, 4.5 assists, doesn't turn the ball over a whole heck of a lot. Louisiana, about 12 turnovers per contest, and this has been a Louisiana team that, much like Bowling Green, it feels like they've really been ascending with their offense throughout the season. It was a little bit of a work in progress towards being part of it, but now they've been able to fortify themselves. Now they've been able to find a lot of good open looks in general. So I've been fairly impressed there, and I do think that for Bowling Green, it's going to be imperative that they just do a solid job of being able to guard the 3-point line. It's been a little bit inconsistent for them all throughout the season, as they're 326th in the country with this regard, but they have actually been guarding the three-point line a little bit better in a roadside-shoot-court environment rather than when they've been at home. And what's been interesting about this Bowling Green offense as well is that it's traveled relatively well. They only see a fall off about 7 points per 100 possessions in a roadside-shoot-court environment rather than when they are at home. So I do think that they hang with a Louisiana team that's averaging, and I'm not even kidding here, 6.8 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than when they are away from home. So I did set my line at 7. You're at a 7.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bowling Green. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of an up and down game. I set my total 151, so seeing the 150. Also looking at this total over 861, 862 is my DK Network write-up pick. You've got Minnesota and the state with the smallest strengths of the union. It's the road face-off against Iowa. Iowa is a 6.5 point favorite, and your total, it is 155 to 155.5. I said Iowa is a 6 point favorite. Minnesota has been a bulldozer against the spread. They're 19-3 against the spread. I'm willing to take the 6.5 as I set my line at 6, but the write-up here is actually on the over. I set my total at a 162. Last time these two teams played, they shot a combined 8 of 41 from three-point range, actually 8 of 42 from three-point range, and yet this still went over 160 total points in that game. If they were able to hit the over the first time around in Minnesota, where you've got an Iowa team that is just such a different offense when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot-court environment, I do think that you're going to get a nice scoring expose here. I'm going to be taking a look at this total over, and for Minnesota, the defense is very much leaky when they leave home. This is a top 50 team in Minnesota in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they are giving up 19.8 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-court environment rather than at home. They're going up against an Iowa team that in their last 33 games at Carver Hawkeye Arena, they have reached at least 75 in 31 of them, and for this Minnesota team, they should shoot a whole heck of a lot better than 5 of 29 from three-point range like they did the last time around. Now, their three-point shooting percentage is more around about the mid-30s, 34 or so percent at home in a roadside shoot-court environment. That does drop to 29.9%, but I mean, even if it goes to 29.9%, that's a whole heck of a lot better than they shot the last time around. You've got Justin Garcia, who's able to do a nice job down low, supplying about 17.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest, so I do think that he's going to be able to have himself a nice showing here, and then everyone around Dawson Garcia is pretty solid at being able to hit threes. Joseph, a la Joseph, shoots 49% for 3, 9.5 points per game, and then you've got Mikey Mitchell along Cam Christie, combined to shoot about 39% from the outside. They've been able to combine for about 21 points per contest, going up against an Iowa team that they play at warp speed. They're in the top 40 nationally with regards to total possessions per game, and Iowa's always a top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're back there once again this season, and Iowa, they do shoot it quite a bit better when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot-court environment, shooting about 35.5% from three-point range at home, sub 32.5% in a roadside shoot-court environment, and you've got a trio for this Iowa bunch as combining for a little bit over 45 points per contest, and Ben Krikke, Peyton Sanford, along Tony Perkins, they all give you at least 4 rebounds per game as well. Now, for Iowa, they've actually done a halfway decent job of being able to guard the three-point line in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. You're actually a top 150 team in all of college basketball away from home. At home, this actually takes a big fall. If they allow opponents to shoot 36% from three-point range at home, they're in the bottom 100 with that regard, so that's a little bit interesting, but I do think that for Minnesota, they are going to relent on a lot of opportunities for Iowa to be able to shoot from 3, and what's interesting about Iowa is if you look at their raw possessions per game, they're 37th in all of college basketball. This ascends to 12th at home. They play at a completely different style at home. I do think that you're going to get a lot of efficient looks for both of these teams. I think that both of these teams are going to be able to blow past the 75-point marker. I do think that you're at a 6.5. We've went a little bit too far with Iowa as well, so I'm going to be willing to take the 6.5 with Minnesota. Hey, if Minnesota's down 6 with a minute remaining, late game fouling helps out with the total even more, and that is my write-up on the over. 863, 864 is how we wrap it up. Northern Iowa, they're facing off against Illinois Chicago. UIC does find themselves as a underdog at home of 3 points, so tonight's game is 138.5. I did say Northern Iowa is a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 3 with them with Northern Iowa. The defense has been able to pick it up after they were ghastly out of conference. Out of conference, this team was well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you've been able to get Bowen Bourne going. He's not necessarily a consistent 3-point shooter, but he has been able to supply this team with about 13 points, chips in there about 2 assists, shoots 32.5% from 3-point range for a team that they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per game. This is a Northern Iowa team that they're going to allow you some 3-point shooting opportunities of their own. 264th in all of college basketball is Northern Iowa in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that's the one thing that UIC has really done a good job of. Illinois Chicago is 17th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so they've been able to lock it down there. And for this UIC team, though the defense has taken a little bit of a fall off, that is really the bread and butter and the forte of this team. Illinois Chicago has been one of your better mid-major defenses in all of college basketball, 91st in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, but they're actually giving up 7.1 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral environment. And if you look at the season-long numbers for Northern Iowa, they're 228th, and in the last few games, they've fallen on some tough times, a little bit of bad matchups in general out there in the Missouri Valley Conference that has much improved with regards to the offense, but all in all, they've been able to do a better job defensively. Now, neither of these teams necessarily have a lot of size, been able to get about 4 boards per contest out of Jacob Hudson for this Northern Iowa team, but both of these teams are well outside the top 150 with regards to rebound rate, but I do think that Toby Okani is going to be able to provide some good versatility for UIC. Shoots about 30% from 3, 10.5 points, 7.5 boards, 2 blocks, a little bit over a steal per contest, but it's all about Isaiah Rivera. What is he able to supply to this team on offense? You've got CJ Jones doling out the ball to him with about 4.5 assists, 11 points per game for Jones, shooting 40% from 3, but Rivera is really that guy that's able to go into flamethrower mode, shoots 42% from 3-point range for an Illinois Chicago team that actually shoot it quite well from 3-point range. His bunch is shooting in that neighborhood about 36.5% from 3-point range. For Illinois Chicago, they are generating about 7.5 to 8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And for this Northern Iowa team, that can be a little bit hit or miss from the outside, but they're actually shooting Northern Iowa's more around 35.5% from 3 away from home, closer to 33.9% when they are at home. And I do think that with Northern Iowa being able to be a little bit more efficient with regards to their defense, and with this Illinois Chicago team being a bunch that has been falling off a little bit with regards to their offense, you take a look at what they've been doing recently. This is a UIC team that has scored 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, 65 or fewer in 3 of those games, and with the way that Northern Iowa has been able to D it up recently as well, I do think that Northern Iowa goes on the road, gets the job done just before the Super Bowl. I'm willing to lay up to 3 with Northern Iowa. Did semi-total at a 137.5, so here at the 138.5, also looking under, and that will wrap things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways via for those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, that mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And a big thanks to Justin Perri. He does tremendous work over at Chocolate Best. He joined me in the last segment, and I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm going to be coming at you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.